All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down the terrifying mechanics of a supernatural encounter deep within the forests of Tell Village. We're going to unpack a deeply unsettling Hindi horror story, and honestly, we're going to treat it almost like a true crime case study. We really want to understand exactly how a haunting of this magnitude escalates, and more importantly, how on earth someone actually survives it.
Bring me my head, or I will take yours. I mean, wow, talk about an ultimatum, right? This chilling demand drops us squarely into the sky-high stakes of today's case. Just imagine being a survivor, trapped in a completely abandoned wooden mansion, and backed into a corner by a supernatural entity. It isn't just trying to spook you, it wants a brutal transaction. This quote is the absolute pivot point of our story, the moment where pure, blinding panic has to somehow transition into focused, deductive survival. But how did our subjects even end up in this nightmare to begin with?
Well, let's get into Section 1, Lost in the Dark Woods, a wrong turn in Tell Village.
We kick off our chronological breakdown with what seems like a totally normal everyday scenario. Picture this. It's a gorgeous moonlit night, and three friends, our narrator, Suresh and Ajay, are out for a bike ride on a desolate forest path. The moon is bright enough to see by, but a routine bathroom break on the side of the road is literally all it takes for the whole situation to go completely off the rails. Ajay steps away into the woods and just vanishes. After his friends count down and get no response, these agonizing screams rip through the quiet night. When the narrator and Suresh rush in, Ajay is gone. Instead, they find fresh blood on the leaves and these deep, heavy drag marks scoring the forest floor. And then they see it. The visual that sets off the whole nightmare. A mysterious woman in a black sari, dragging Ajay away by his leg at this impossible, unnatural speed right before vanishing into the dark.
That brings us to Section 2, the abandoned wooden mansion. We are now entering the entity's lair.
The geography of this horror is honestly fascinating. Those drag marks we just talked about, they don't just fade away into the brush. They lead straight to a decaying two-story wooden mansion perfectly hidden in the absolute center of the forest, totally overgrown with wild grass. And the sensory details here immediately build this heavy atmosphere of decay and tragic abandonment. When the narrator pushes the front door open, swarms of bats just erupt into the night sky. Inside, you've got corridors absolutely choked with spider webs and layers of thick dust. The antique wooden chairs and tables are completely devoured by insects, literally turning back into soil. And crucially, there are these neglected, dust-covered photographs of a couple hanging on the walls. So right away we know this isn't just an empty house, it's a grave for someone's past.
Out of nowhere, Ajay's screams echo from inside the house, followed by dead silence. Now Suresh is completely terrified. He's frantically pleading with the narrator to run away, convinced they're dealing with a witch. But the narrator ignores him and pushes forward. And then, bam! Fresh blood dripping steadily down the wooden stairs from the second floor. Proving his absolute loyalty to his best friend, the narrator bravely follows those bleeding stairs upward into the dark.
This is where the gut punch visual hits. The narrator reaches the second-floor corridor and finds Ajay. He's been brutally murdered. His body is suspended from the ceiling by his feet, tightly bound with thick black rope, with his arms just dangling lifelessly toward the floor. But the most horrific detail of all, his head is completely missing.
This moment perfectly captures the sheer psychological terror of a haunting like this. Because on one hand, logic dictates reality. Ajay's body is visibly decapitated, drained of blood, and undeniably dead. But on the other hand, there's the impossible horror. Ajay's unmistakable voice is crying out, saying, "Brother, save me," from the pitch-black room right next door. It forces the survivor's brains to completely short-circuit. How do you process that?
So he shines a flashlight into that dark room, and what he sees is pure, unadulterated nightmare fuel. Sitting in the corner is a woman in a sari with her back turned, crying in Ajay's voice. When she turns around, she has no head, none. Instead, she's holding Ajay's severed head in her hands. Right in front of them, she places Ajay's head onto her own severed neck, twitches, and the head actually attaches. She smiles at them using their dead friend's face and issues that chilling demand: bring her original head or lose theirs.
Things go from bad to worse in a heartbeat as the two friends scramble to flee. The narrator makes it back out to the woods, but suddenly realizes Suresh isn't right behind him. He looks back and sees Suresh walking like a total zombie back to the mansion, completely hypnotized by the ghost who is now smiling at him from the second-story window. The narrator tries to pull him away, but Suresh violently shoves him into a tree.
The narrator rushes inside, but he's too late. He watches as Suresh, murmuring the ghost's demand, effortlessly takes a knife and just cuts off his own head to surrender it to the entity.
Which brings us to Section 3, the headless ghost's demand. It is time to uncover the tragedy.
The narrator is now trapped at the front door. The ghost is blocking the only exit. He knows that giving in to pure panic is going to get him killed, just like it did Suresh. To survive, he has to somehow solve her murder. And this is an incredible pivot by the narrator. He says, "I don't know what happened to you. You must tell me everything about the day you were murdered." By demanding the ghost's backstory, he brilliantly shifts the dynamic. This isn't just survival horror anymore. It's a desperate, high-stakes, true crime interrogation. He literally forces the entity to become a witness to her own demise.
Let's move on to Section 4, a tragic summer vacation, the origin of the curse.
Surprisingly, the ghost agrees to tell her story, and her confession flips our entire understanding of this haunted mansion upside down. It wasn't always this dark, rotting lair. It was once a beautiful summer vacation home for her and her husband, the very couple from those dusty photographs. The timeline of that fateful day carefully dissects the rapid escalation of violence. 3 19 or 20-year-old campers, totally drunk and carrying backpacks, knock on the door asking for water. Being kind, she obliges, but they force their way in with malicious intent. Right then, her husband returns from fishing, drops his catch, and fights them to protect his wife, but he's fatally stabbed with a camping knife. The wife fights back tooth and nail, biting one of the attacker's hands, which enrages him so much he stabs her, and in a drunken frenzy, completely severs her head. They bury her body under a massive banyan tree, but for whatever reason, they take her head away, and so her soul awakens incomplete.
Okay, Section 5, freeing the trapped soul. Let's dig into the survival deduction.
Armed with this deeply tragic history, the narrator finally understands the mechanics of the haunting. The ghost isn't just killing for fun. Her soul is literally incomplete. He realizes he has to use sheer logic to fulfill her conditions. He needs to reunite her missing head with her buried body and burn them together to grant her salvation. But where is the head? He asks for her very last memory as she was fading away. The final clue? They were talking about frying the fish. He locks onto this fading auditory memory, the killers discussing the single fish her husband had caught and dropped on the floor as the absolute key to finding that missing skull.
Using a highly analytical survival method, he deduces that one single fish wouldn't be nearly enough to feed 3 hungry campers. So it stands to reason that one of them must have taken the husband's fishing rod back out to the pond behind the house and carried the severed head with him to dispose of it in the water. The narrator walks out to the pond, traces the exact path a natural visitor would take, picks up a heavy, skull-sized coconut lying on the shore, and hurls it into the water to simulate the killer's throw. Then, he dives right in, committing to searching a strict 5-meter radius around the splash zone.
And incredibly, his sharp deductive reasoning under extreme pressure actually pays off. After nearly 2 grueling hours of diving again and again into the dark, murky water, his theory is proven correct. He pulls the missing skull straight up from the deep mud at the bottom of the pond. The flesh has been completely eaten away by the very fish the killers were trying to catch.
He brings the skull back to the property and executes the liberation ritual. He digs up the unmarked grave beneath the massive banyan tree, exactly where she said it would be. He reunites the recovered, fleshless skull with her skeletal remains in the dirt and sets the entire body on fire. Executing these final steps breaks the curse once and for all. The narrator watches as the spirit finally ascends to the sky, liberated, which gives him a tiny, narrow window to sprint out of the forest and escape with his life.
And that wraps up our explainer for today. But here's the thing. While the narrator's cold logic and deductive reasoning successfully solved the mechanics of the haunting, and yes, the curse was broken, he still had to leave the horrific, headless remains of his 2 best friends behind in that decaying mansion. It really highlights the deep psychological scars of survival. It leaves us with this lingering thought. Could you ever truly forget leaving your friends behind? What is the real, lasting cost of walking away from the tragedy of Tell Village?